On a special Sunday, my daughter, Clara, gave her husband's mother a really expensive ring and a fancy trip on a boat. Me? I got a cheap plastic flower and a note. The next day, Clara called me 28 times. "Please, Mom, don't sell the business," she begged. I'm Nancy, and I'm 67 years old. I thought I had seen every kind of sadness life could throw at me. I was wrong. Mother's Day began like any other Sunday. I woke up in my quiet house, made coffee for just myself, and tried not to think about how still everything had been since my husband, Tom, passed away 3 years ago. The quiet used to feel peaceful, but lately it just reminded me of all the talks we'd never have again. Clara had called the night before, her voice distant and formal. "Mom, we're having brunch at Evelyn's house tomorrow. You should come, 1 o'clock sharp." Should come, not "we'd love to have you." It felt like a duty, not an invitation. I arrived at Evelyn's house right at 1. The driveway was already full of expensive cars, and I could hear happy sounds from the backyard. Evelyn was everything I wasn't: fancy, social, always looking perfect. Her house looked like it was from a magazine, with white floors and fresh flowers. When I walked through the gate, I saw them all gathered around the patio table. Clara sat next to Evelyn, their heads close, sharing a secret joke. My son-in-law, Ben, was cooking outside, acting like the perfect son Evelyn had raised. "Nancy," Evelyn called out, her smile perfectly fake, "so glad you could make it." Clara looked up and gave me a quick nod. "Hi, Mom, you can sit over there." She pointed to an empty chair at the far end of the table, away from the main group. I sat down quietly, watching everyone chat about things I wasn't a part of. Ben's sister was there with her kids, Evelyn's card club friends, even the neighbors. Everyone seemed to belong, except me. Then came the gift time. "Oh, Evelyn, we have something special for you," Clara announced, standing up with an excitement I hadn't seen from her in years. Ben came to her side, holding a small velvet box and an envelope. Evelyn gasped when she opened the box. Inside was a shining diamond ring, the kind that sparkles from far away. "Clara, dear, this is too much." "It's not too much for the woman who raised such an amazing son," Clara gushed, hugging Evelyn tightly. "And there's more." The envelope held tickets for a cruise, 2 weeks in the Mediterranean, first class. Evelyn actually started crying, and everyone clapped while Clara glowed with pride. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. That ring alone was at least $20,000, maybe more. "And now for Grandma Nancy," Ben said, though his voice wasn't as excited. Clara walked over to me carrying a small gift bag. Inside was a plastic flower, the kind you'd find at a dollar store, and a card that looked like it was bought at the last minute from a drugstore. I opened the card. The printed message said, "Happy Mother's Day." And underneath, in Clara's handwriting, "Thanks for everything, Mom. Thanks for everything." Like I was just a store clerk. The table went quiet. I could feel everyone looking at me, waiting for my reaction. Evelyn cleared her throat uncomfortably. Even Ben looked embarrassed. "It's lovely," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, dear." But Clara had already turned back to Evelyn, happily telling her about the places they'd chosen for the cruise. The talk moved on without me, and I sat there holding my $5 plastic flower, feeling smaller than I had in years. I stayed for another hour, watching my daughter give so much attention to a woman she'd known for only 12 years while treating me like an afterthought. When I finally said I needed to leave, Clara barely looked up. "Thanks for coming, Mom. Drive safe." The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about that ring, those cruise tickets, the pure joy on Clara's face when she gave them. When was the last time she had looked at me that way? When was the last time she had put thought into anything she gave me? I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a long time, staring at that silly plastic flower. 43 years of being her mother, and this is what I was worth, a last-minute thought from the discount bin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept playing the scene over and over, wondering where I had gone wrong. I had built a successful business from nothing, hired many people, helped my community, But somehow, I had failed at the one thing that mattered most, being worthy of my daughter's love. I got up and walked to my home office, where I kept all my important papers, money details, tax forms, business deals, everything that showed my life's work. And that's when I started to wonder what exactly I had built all of this for. The sleepless night turned into a sleepless week. I couldn't stop thinking about that plastic flower, about the way Clara had looked at Evelyn with such real love. It hurt me deeply. I decided I needed answers. Not from a fight or a big talk, but real answers, the kind hidden in bank statements and old receipts. I spent the next Saturday in my office, pulling out old file cabinets I hadn't touched in years. Tom used to joke that I was a hoarder, keeping every paper, every receipt. You never know when you might need proof, I'd tell him. I never thought I'd need proof of my own motherhood. The first file I opened was labeled Clara's College. Inside were payments for school, housing, and dozens of smaller costs I'd forgotten about, books, a computer, even parking tickets she got on campus. $47,000 total, not including the car I bought her in her third year when hers broke down. But that was just the start. I found the folder marked Clara and Ben's wedding. $58,000 for just one day. The place, flowers, food, her dress, the photographer. I had insisted on paying for everything because I wanted her day to be perfect. Ben's parents had only given a case of wine. Then came the house files. When Clara and Ben got married, they wanted to buy a home in the fancy lakeside area. Their combined earnings weren't enough for the loan on the house they wanted, so I had signed for them. Then, when Ben's business had a hard time 2 years later, I quietly took over the house payments for 6 months. They never knew. I made sure of that. The car payments were next. 3 different cars over the years, each one just a loan until we get back on our feet. Somehow, those loans never got paid back, and I never asked. I just quietly added the payments to my monthly bills. But it was the emergency fund that really got to me. In 2019, Ben's Darden business had almost failed. He had made some bad choices with money, trusted the wrong people. They were facing ruin. Clara had called me crying, begging for help. I had sent $85,000 that same day. No papers, no payment plans, just a mother helping her child. They bought a boat 6 months later. I sat back in my chair, staring at the calculator. Over the past 15 years, I had given or spent nearly $400,000 on Clara and Ben. College, wedding, house, cars, business help, and countless smaller costs I'd stopped counting years ago. $400,000, more than most people see in a lifetime. And yesterday, I'd gotten a plastic flower. The truly painful part wasn't the money. I had made good investments over the years, built a successful advising company. I could afford to be generous. The painful part was realizing that my giving had become invisible to Clara, expected, taken for granted. I pulled out my phone and looked through our text messages from the past year. Her messages were short, just for tasks. Can you pick up the dry cleaning? Ben needs to borrow your truck. The kids need school stuff. Always asking, never offering. Never a random, "How are you, Mom?" or "Thinking of you." But Evelyn got cruise tickets and diamond rings. I found myself opening my laptop and looking up the loan on Clara's house. Still in my name, of course. The payments came directly from my business account, set up years ago so I wouldn't have to think about it. That business account. I pulled up the monthly statements and went through them line by line. Ben's lawn service took care of the grounds at 3 of my business properties. I paid him 30% more than others, though I never mentioned that. Clara's part-time bookkeeping for my smaller clients brought her $1,200 a month for maybe 6 hours of work. They weren't just my daughter and son-in-law. They were my dependents, adults in their 30s who had built their whole life around my money. And somehow, I had become the bad guy in their story, the distant mother who didn't understand them, who couldn't relate to their lives. They had painted me as cold and uncaring while living off my giving. I closed the laptop and looked around my office. Photos covered the wall, showing me at different company events, awards from the business group, newspaper articles about business wins. But there were no recent pictures of Clara and me together. She had stopped wanting to take photos with me years ago. The clock on my desk read 4:30 p.m. I had been going through papers for 8 hours, and the picture was painfully clear. I had spent years trying to buy my daughter's love, and all I had done was teach her that I was a source of money, not affection. My phone buzzed, a text from Clara. "Mom, Ben's truck broke down. Can we borrow yours for a few days?" I stared at the message for a long time before answering. "I'll think about it." It was the first time in years I hadn't immediately said yes. That night, I made a choice that would change everything. I called my lawyer. Monday morning, I sat across from Maria Sanchez, my lawyer for the past 12 years. Her office looked over the city, and I could see my own building from her window, a reminder of everything I had built over the years. "Nancy, you look tired," Maria said, sitting behind her desk with a cup of tea. "What's on your mind?" I had practiced this talk in my head all weekend, but sitting there, the words felt heavy. "I want to discuss selling my business." Maria's eyebrows went up. "Riverbend Consulting? But you've spent 30 years building that company. It's your legacy." "That's exactly the problem," I said quietly. "I need to understand what would happen to my family if I sold." I watched Maria's face change as she realized this wasn't a simple question. She pulled out a notepad, her professional look in place. "Tell me your worries," she said. Over the next hour, I told her everything I had found. The house payments, the business deals, the web of money dependence I had unknowingly created. Maria took notes, sometimes asking for more details, but her face stayed calm. "So, if you sold the business," she said finally, "Ben would lose his main work deals, Clara would lose her bookkeeping money, and they'd need to get their own house loan." "Exactly." Maria leaned back in her chair. "Nancy, can I ask what made you think of this? Last time we spoke, you were talking about making the business bigger, maybe bringing Clara in as a partner." I told her about Mother's Day, about the plastic flower and the diamond ring, about years of feeling like an ATM with legs. Maria listened without stopping me, though I saw her wince at some details. "I see," she said when I finished, "and you're thinking of selling as a way to—" "As a way to find out who my daughter really is," I said. "Right now, I don't know if she loves me or my money." Maria nodded slowly. "There are ways to do this slowly. We could change your business arrangements, maybe move some of the money help over time." "No," I said firmly. "Slow change gives people time to get used to it, to find new ways to trick the situation. If I'm going to do this, it needs to be clear." We spent another hour talking about the plans. Maria had contacts in the business selling world, people who knew about advising companies. She guessed the process would take 3 to 6 months, depending on how fast we moved. "I'll need complete secrecy," I said. "No one can know until the sale is done." "Of course, but Nancy, once you do this, there's no going back. Are you ready for how Clara might react?" I thought about that plastic flower sitting on my kitchen counter. I'm ready for her to show me exactly who she is. That afternoon, I started making small changes. I called Ben's garden company and told them I'm thinking about using a different service for my business properties. "Budget reasons," I explained. "I need to get other prices." The panic in his voice was instant. "Mrs. Miller, we can talk, maybe lower our prices." "It's not about the prices, Ben. It's about looking at options." Next, I called my smaller clients who used Clara for bookkeeping. I told them I was changing my referral system and they'd need to find new services within 60 days. Professional, businesslike, no personal reasons. Clara called that evening, her voice tight with worry. "Mom, Mrs. Jenkins said you're not sending bookkeepers anymore. Did I do something wrong?" "Not at all, dear. I'm just making my business simpler." "But I need those clients. That's my income." "I'm sure you'll find other chances," I said calmly. "You're very smart." There was a long pause. "Mom, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." "I'm fine, Clara. Just busy with some business matters." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at that plastic flower. For the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Control. Not the kind that comes from writing checks or solving problems, but the kind that comes from making your own choices. The next few weeks became a routine. I met with possible buyers, looked at money papers, and slowly pulled apart the ties that connected my business to my daughter's life.
Maria handled most of the legal work, but I insisted on being part of every decision. The hardest part was the secret. I had never been good at keeping things from Clara, even when I probably should have. But this felt different. This felt needed. 3 weeks into the process, I got a call from Ben. "Mrs. Miller, I heard from someone at the business group that you might be selling your business. Is that true?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "People talk, Ben. You know how it is. But if you were selling, you'd tell us, right? I mean, it would affect our deals. If and when I make any big business choices, you'll be told properly." That night, Clara showed up at my door. She looked tired, her hair messy, wearing an old sweatshirt I remembered from her college days. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "Ben's deals, my bookkeeping clients, now rumors about you selling the business? What's going on?" I sat down across from her, hands folded in my lap. "I'm thinking about what's most important to me." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm 67 years old, and I'm tired of carrying everyone else's responsibilities." Clara's face turned red. "Is this about Mother's Day? About the gift? I'm sorry if you didn't like it, but we've been really short on money lately." I almost laughed. Short on money while living in a house I paid for, driving cars I'd bought, working jobs I'd arranged. But I didn't say that. Instead, I just looked at her and said, "This isn't about one day, Clara. This is about understanding what really matters." She left 20 minutes later, frustrated and confused. I watched her drive away in the car I'd signed for, back to the house where I paid the loan, but not for much longer. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was looking over the final buying agreement. Maria had found a buyer, a larger advising company looking to grow in the area. The offer was good, more than I'd expected. My phone rang just as I was signing the first papers. The caller ID showed my home number, which was strange since I was at Maria's office. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. This is Mr. Thompson from Thompson & Partners. I'm trying to reach you about buying Riverbend Consulting." My blood ran cold. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Mr. Thompson, my company is handling the checks for the purchase." "I may have dialed the wrong number. I was trying to reach your office." "You called my home number." "Oh, I apologize. Someone answered and said they were your assistant. They gave me permission to discuss the details of the sale." I closed my eyes. Only one person had a key to my house. Only one person would answer my phone and pretend to have power they didn't have. "Thank you for calling, Mr. Thompson. Please send all future messages through my lawyer, Maria Sanchez." I hung up and immediately called my house. It rang 4 times before Clara answered. "Mom's house, this is Clara." "What are you doing in my house?" There was a pause. Then her voice changed completely. "Mom, I thought you were at some meeting. I just came by to water your plants." "I don't have plants that need watering." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay, fine. I was looking for something. Ben said you might have some old tax papers he needs." "And you answered my phone because it kept ringing? I thought it might be important." I could hear the lies falling apart in her voice. "Clara, I'm coming home. We need to talk." The drive from Maria's office to my house took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept replaying that phone call. The way Clara had pretended to be my assistant, allowed to talk about secret business matters. The boldness of it was shocking. When I pulled into my driveway, Clara's car was still there. I found her in my home office, sitting at my desk with papers spread around her. She looked up when I walked in, her face a mix of stubbornness and guilt. "Find what you were looking for?" I asked. She pointed to the papers. "Mom, what is this? You're really selling the company?" I walked over and started gathering the papers, buying agreements, money statements, secret papers, everything she shouldn't have seen. "These are private business matters." "Private? Mom, this affects all of us. Ben's business depends on your deals. My income comes from your referrals. You can't just sell without talking to us." I stopped collecting papers and really looked at her. She was 35 years old, sitting in my chair at my desk, demanding answers about choices for my own business. When had I let this happen? "Actually, Clara, I can sell my business without asking anyone. It's my company." "But what about us? What about our family?" "What about our family?" I repeated the question slowly. When did you start caring about our family? Her face turned red. I've always cared. You're my mother. Am I? Or am I your bank? The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, the sound of normal life continuing while mine fell apart. Clara's voice was smaller when she spoke again. Mom, if you're upset about Mother's Day, I already said sorry. We can do something special next year. Next year, I said quietly, like the year after that, and the year after that, always next year when it comes to treating me with respect. I sat down in the chair across from my own desk, looking at my daughter as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Do you know how much money I've given you and Ben over the years? She shifted uncomfortably. We never asked you to keep track. $400,000, not including the house loan. I'm still paying on your house for you, or the business deals I've arranged for Ben, or the referrals that provide your income. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. She clearly hadn't expected me to have real numbers. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad, I continued. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. I've been paying for your whole adult life, and somehow along the way, you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as a resource. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked how I was doing? How I was handling your father's death? Whether I was lonely in this big empty house? Her face crumpled slightly. Mom, When Evelyn got a $20,000 ring and a cruise, and I got a plastic flower, it wasn't about the money. It was about the thought, the care, the consideration. You spent more time picking out Evelyn's gift than you did thinking about mine. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but I couldn't stop. The words had been building up for years. You treat Evelyn like family because she doesn't give you anything. You have to earn her love. But me? I'm just expected to provide, to support, to let you live your life without question. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Do you? Or do you love what I can do for you? She couldn't answer that question. We both knew why. My phone rang, breaking the heavy silence. The caller ID showed Ben's name. Don't answer it, Clara said quickly. I picked up the phone. Hello, Ben. Mrs. Miller, Clara told me about the business sale. We need to talk about this as a family. This decision affects all of us. Actually, Ben, it doesn't. It affects me. It's my business to sell. But our deals, our way of living. Your way of living has been my job for too long. It's time for you both to take care of yourselves. I hung up and looked at Clara, who was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Mom, you can't be serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. That's when she started to panic. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. Clara's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again right away, and again. By the time I finished my coffee, she'd called 12 times. I finally answered on the 13th call. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. We talked yesterday, Clara. I think I was quite clear. You can't just ruin our lives because you're upset about a Mother's Day gift. I set down my coffee cup, feeling that familiar anger rise. This has nothing to do with one gift, and you know it. Then what? What do you want from me? I want you to understand that I'm not your personal ATM. I want you to see me as a person, not a source of money. I do see you as a person. You're my mother. When was the last time you treated me like one? Silence. Then, Mom, if you sell the business, we'll lose everything. The house, Ben's deals, my clients. We'll have to start over. Yes, you will. And maybe that's exactly what you need. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, she called back. Then again, then again. I stopped counting after the 15th call. Each voicemail was a different version of the same message. Pleading, trying to make a deal, threatening, manipulating. She used every trick she'd learned over the years. Mom, please call me back. We can work this out. Mom, Ben's having chest pains from the stress. Do you want to put him in the hospital? Crying. Mom, I'm sorry about the flower. I'll make it up to you. Just please don't sell the company. Mom, everyone's going to think you're being mean and cruel. Is that really how you want people to remember you?
By noon, she'd called 28 times. I knew because I'd started counting. Each call showed how desperate she was. She was finally understanding what I'd been trying to tell her, that her whole life was built on my giving, and I was tired of being taken for granted. The doorbell rang at 2:30 p.m. I looked through the peephole and saw Clara standing on my porch, her eyes red and swollen. Ben stood behind her, his face showing barely hidden anger. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Mom, please," Clara started right away. "We need to talk about this like adults." "We tried that yesterday. You weren't interested in talking. You were interested in looking at my private papers and pretending to be my assistant." Ben stepped forward. "Mrs. Miller, with all respect, this is affecting more than just you. We have a family to think about." "So do I said quietly. "I have to think about what's best for my family. And right now, what's best is for all of you to learn to stand on your own feet." Clara's face crumpled. "Mom, I'm begging you, please don't do this." "You're begging me now? When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? When was the last time you invited me to dinner that wasn't a holiday duty? When was the last time you called just to say you love me?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. We all knew the answer. "I thought so," I said. "You only call when you need something. You only visit when you want something. You only care when you're about to lose something." Ben's anger finally burst out. "This is crazy. You're punishing us for being successful, for building a life together." "Successful?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ben, you're 37 years old, and you've never made a house payment on your own home. Clara's whole income comes from work I arranged for her. You call that successful?" "We call it family," Clara said, her voice breaking. "Families help each other." "Help goes both ways, Clara. What have you done to help me? What have you given to this family besides taking?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Clara looked at Ben, then back at me, searching for an answer that didn't exist. "I gave you grandchildren," she said finally. "No, you didn't. You moved 3 states away and visit twice a year. I haven't seen Leo and Sophia in 8 months." Her face went white. Even Ben looked uncomfortable. "You want to know what family looks like?" I continued. "Evelyn's family calls her every week. They visit without being asked. They remember her birthday without being reminded. They give her thoughtful gifts because they pay attention to what she likes. That's why she got the ring and the cruise. That's why she's treated like someone who matters." Clara was crying now, but I couldn't stop. Years of hurt were pouring out. I spent 30 years building a business so I could provide for my family. I wanted to give you safety, chances, a better life than I had. But somewhere along the way, you stopped appreciating what I gave you and started expecting it. You stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'll do better. I'll be better." "You're sorry because you're scared," I said. "You're not sorry because you understand what you did wrong." Ben grabbed Clara's arm. "Come on, we're wasting our time here. She's made up her mind." But Clara pulled away from him. "No, wait." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years, real weakness. "Mom, what do you want from me? Tell me what I need to do to fix this." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. 35 years old, crying on my doorstep, finally asking the right question, but it was too late. "I want you to figure out who you are without my money," I said. "I want you to learn to value relationships that aren't just about getting something. I want you to understand that love isn't about what someone can give you." "And then what? If I do all that, will you change your mind?" I shook my head slowly. "Clara, I'm not selling the business to punish you. I'm selling it to free myself. I'm 67 years old, and I want to find out what my life looks like when I'm not responsible for everyone else's choices." I stepped back and started to close the door. "Mom, wait," she called out. "I love you. I really do love you." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "I love you too, Clara. That's why I'm doing this.
Then I closed the door and listened to her cry on my porch for the next 10 minutes before they finally drove away. The sale would be final in 2 weeks. 3 months after the sale closed, I was sitting on the porch of my new small house by the lake, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. The house was smaller than what I'd left behind, but it was truly mine, in a way the old house never had been. No memories of broken hopes, no rooms that echoed with sadness. The move had been surprisingly easy. 30 years of business papers, deals, and messages, all packed up and put away. I kept only what mattered: a few photos, Tom's favorite books, and the blanket my mother had made when Clara was born. The cottage came with furniture, which was perfect for me. I didn't want to bring the past into this new life. The previous owners had left simple, comfortable furniture and a garden that needed care. I'd never had time for gardening before, but now I had nothing but time.
Clara hadn't called in 6 weeks. The silence hurt, but it also brought clarity. I'd spent so many years judging my worth by her approval, her visits, her needs. Now I was learning to judge it by my own peace of mind. The business sale had given me more than enough money for a comfortable retirement. I'd set up a fund for my grandchildren's education, money they'd get directly when they turned 18, with no strings attached and no access for their parents. It was my way of making sure they'd have chances without helping their parents' bad habits. I'd also quietly paid off the loan on Clara and Ben's house, not as a gift, but as a final separation. They now owned their home completely, but they also knew they'd never get another penny from me. It was the last check I'd ever write for them. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the caller ID. Sarah, my neighbor from across the lake. We'd become friends over the past month, sharing morning walks and evening glasses of wine. Nancy, are you free for dinner tomorrow? My son and daughter-in-law are visiting, and I'd love for you to meet them. I'd like that, I said, and realized I meant it. Sarah's relationship with her children was everything mine had never been: natural, fair, built on real love instead of duty. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked down to the dock. The water was still, reflecting the last light of day. A family of ducks paddled by, the babies following their mother in a perfect line. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart jumped, thinking it might be Clara. But it was from Maria, my lawyer. Thought you'd want to know. Ben's garden business filed for bankruptcy yesterday. Clara's looking for work at the local school. How are you doing? I stared at the message for a long time before answering. I'm doing well, thank you for letting me know. I felt a little sadness for them, but not guilt. They were adults who'd made choices. Now they were learning to live with the results, just like everyone else. A bird called across the water, its haunting cry echoing off the hills. I'd never heard that sound before moving here. There were a lot of things I'd never experienced while I was busy being responsible for everyone else's life. Tomorrow, I was starting a pottery class in town. Next week, I'd signed up for a book club. Small things, but they were mine, chosen because they interested me, not because someone else needed me to do them. The strangest thing about this new life was how light I felt. For years, I'd carried the weight of other people's problems, their bad choices, their money troubles. I'd thought that weight was love, but it wasn't. It was enabling, and it had hurt us all. Real love, I was learning, sometimes meant saying no. Sometimes it meant letting people struggle so they could grow. Sometimes it meant walking away so they could find their own strength. 6 months later, I got a letter. Not a phone call or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. The return address was Clara's, but the handwriting was different, more careful, more thoughtful. Dear Mom, it began. I've been trying to write this letter for months, but I never knew what to say. I kept wanting to ask you to come back, to fix things, to make everything the way it was before. But I finally understand that the way things were before wasn't good for any of us. I set the letter down and took a deep breath before continuing. Ben and I are getting divorced. I know you probably heard about the bankruptcy, about me working at the school. It's been the hardest year of my life, but also the most honest. I had to learn who I was without your money, without your safety net. I had to figure out how to take care of myself. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for taking you for granted. I'm sorry for treating you like a duty instead of a person. I'm sorry for all the years I wasted being angry at you for things that weren't your fault. I understand now why you sold the business.
You weren't punishing me, you were freeing both of us. I just wish it hadn't taken me this long to see it. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to tell me. Family isn't about what you can give someone or what they can give you. It's about showing up, paying attention, and caring about someone for who they are, not what they can do for you. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope you found the peace you were looking for. You deserve it. Love, Clara. P.S. I kept the plastic flower. It's on my kitchen windowsill. And every time I see it, I remember the look on your face that day. I remember the moment I realized I'd broken your heart. I'm sorry it took me so long to care about fixing it. I sat on my porch for a long time after reading that letter, watching the sunset over the water. Then I went inside and wrote a response. Dear Clara, I began. Thank you for your letter. It means more to me than you know. But I didn't mail it that day, or the next day, or the next. Some wounds need time to heal completely before they can be opened safely again. Some relationships need space before they can be rebuilt on a foundation of truth instead of duty. Maybe someday we'd find our way back to each other, but for now, I was happy to be free. Free from guilt, free from being controlled, free from the tiring job of trying to buy love that should have been given freely. I was 67 years old, and for the first time in decades, I was living my own life. It was enough. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.